If you like what I do, consider joining my channel or donating to my coffee. Links in the description. This is the Metroidvania Guru, and Merry Christmas, everyone! Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Holidays, one and all. I hope you're all doing well this season. Me? I'm feeling a bit glum because this is the final episode of the tier list series. It's a bittersweet moment for me, but it's time to put the series to bed. And thus, today's episode is called Wrapped Up Month. See the little present there? I was able to use a pun after all. It's a Christmas miracle. Today's Metroidvanias don't really have a theme, so let's just dive on in, shall we? Yes, we shall. Wonder Labyrinth is set in the world of Record of Lodoss War, a classic Japanese fantasy franchise much akin to Dungeons & Dragons. Wonder Labyrinth follows Deedlit, a high elf, who wakes up in a mysterious labyrinth without any memory of how she got there. As she explores, she encounters familiar faces and battles enemies while uncovering the truth about her predicament. I like Wonder Labyrinth a lot. I'm just gonna call it Wonder Labyrinth because this title's ridiculous. But yeah, I like Wonder Labyrinth a lot. I remember hearing a lot of people say that it reminds them a lot of Symphony of the Night, which I think is a very superficial take on it because the game's beautiful and it does do a lot of things that Symphony of the Night does visually. The main one being how Deedlit moves. She moves and has like after images of herself and is floating and stuff like that. But beyond how the game looks, it's nothing like Symphony of the Night. And if you've played the game, you already know this. But I'm telling that to anyone who may have stumbled upon this and is like, oh yeah, I've heard this game's like that. It's not like Symphony at all. All right, let's dive into the pros. First one I have here is the beautiful pixel art. The game boasts stunning pixel art and smooth animations that bring the world of Lodoss to life. Or at least its characters. You're not actually in the world of Lodoss. I guess you kind of are, whatever. But yeah, there's no two ways about it. This game looks beautiful. I think it's like Team Ladybug or Ladybug. I can't remember the name of the devs. But they are really known for their just beautiful pixel work. When it comes to MV Space, they've done Toho Luna Nights. Then they did this, and now they got Blade Chimera coming out, which I'm really excited for. But yeah, this game it looks incredible. It just is beautiful, and there's no two ways about it, man. It looks great. Next pro I have here is its engaging combat system. Deedlit has many weapons she can equip, but I think there's really three main types. You got like your regular sword, a rapier, and then like a bigger sword that she swings overhead, which is always my favorite. And then she has her bow, which is a whole lot of fun. It shoots. It requires mana to shoot, so you will run out if you're spamming it, and it can deflect off of surfaces and hit enemies, which is really cool. So yeah, the combat in general is nice. Nothing mind-blowing, but pretty good. But what really factors into how cool the combat is the, and you have to excuse me, I can't remember, I'm doing all this off the top of my head. I can't remember the name of the system, but it's kind of like this spirit system that Deedlit has. And essentially she has two spirits that she can use. Sylph, which is the wind spirit, and then I think Salamander, which is the fire spirit. And you can switch them on the fly, and when you do that, you get different properties and all kinds of other cool stuff. For instance, if you equip the wind spirit, you can float in the air, hover in the air for a while, which is really cool. And then any kind of bluish, grayish spells that are which indicates that they're wind-based, those spells do not hurt you. And your attacks become wind-based, so if you're fighting an enemy that has weakness to wind, you're going to do more damage to them. And conversely, if they have resistance to wind, you're not going to hurt them as much. And that kind of brings us to the dice system they have, which is really weird. The game explains it in one of its quick tutorial screenshots. So I can't remember it entirely off the top of my head, but it has something it's like regular die, right? So you got 1 through 6. And depending on that value and the color of the dice, which could be blue or red, it dictates an enemy's weakness/strength. I want to say if it's a blue 6, that means you're going to hurt them really hard with a specific elemental attack. And then if it's a red 1, then they're basically just going to guard all damage from it. I could be wrong. Maybe I'll throw something on the screen to help everyone out. But the point of it is that there is this kind of weakness system, this affinity system. And there are all kinds of different elements in the game, light, dark. You've played RPGs before. You get it. Fire. You've watched Captain Planet. Earth, fire, wind, water, heart. I don't think there's heart. Maybe there's heart. I don't think so. At least not in Deedlit. But yeah, you use the dice that pop up in the bottom right corner to help you figure out how to hurt enemies more, I suppose. It's honestly, it's okay, but I don't remember really like leaning on it at all. I wasn't like, oh, here's a fire enemy, I better use water against them or something like that. If anything, I would just put on an affinity, either the wind or the fire, and if I would hit them and it would say like guard, then I would just switch to the other affinity and just keep smacking them. I don't know. The game, it's not hard enough to really engage, be so invested, I suppose, in its weakness system. Overall, it's a pretty easy game. It's fun, don't get me wrong, but yeah, it's nothing that's gonna really tax you, at least not on the combat front. So what else can I say about the combat? We talked about the affinities, there's different weapon types, you get spells in the game, you gotta find the spells, and those require mana, just like the bow and arrow, and spells have their different affinities. I don't remember any of the spells being like huge. I like you get like a very early spell on, maybe even start with it, but it's like a light spell that shoots out these like homing missiles, I guess, or I guess they're like sprites or fairies. That pretty much carried me through the game, but Deedlit had some other cool stuff, like she can turn invisible, and I think she can lay down a decoy, kind of like an illusionary clone of herself that will distract enemies. I don't know. I didn't really engage with the game's magic too much because I didn't think it was, again, the game wasn't difficult enough for me to be forced to rely on magic. And I guess the last thing about combat, going back to how you can like switch between the two spirits, Sylph and Salamander, wind or fire or whatever. The game has this really interesting aspect to it where Deedlit will heal herself if she has level 3 of any spirit, any of those two spirits. Gosh, this is like really hard to explain, but you have the two spirits and they level up as you hit enemies, right? But it's weird because like if I have the wind spirit equipped and I hit something, it gives me fire spirit energy or experience, if that makes sense. So let's say I have I'm level 1 wind and level 1 fire. If I have the wind equipped and I'm hitting you, then my fire will increase, and I can get that up to level 2 or level 3, and then I can switch to fire and then, increase my wind experience, I guess. That sounds weird, but it's actually really helpful to players. And the reason is because if I'm at level 3, which is the max level on either of these spirits, I'm going to start regaining my health at a pretty rapid pace. And so if I'm wind and I get hit as wind, then I'm going to decrease in my level, just sort of like Cave Story. And so my 3 goes down to a level 2, so I'm going to quickly switch over to the other spirit that I have, in this case would be fire. That's going to put me on level 3 fire, so my life is going to rapidly increase or regen, right? And as I'm level 3 fire and I'm getting my HP back, I'm hitting the enemy and regaining my wind abilities back. So yeah, it seems like it's backwards, but it's a really good move. And I guess that's really all I want to say about the combat in the game. It's fine. It has a nice hook, nice system to it, but the game is largely just super easy. So whether you want to get invested in all the different avenues that you can use within the game's combat, it's going to be up to you. Okay, and my last pro here, there's more pros to the game, don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to keep it kind of concise because we have 6 games to get through. But the last pro I want to talk about is just the nostalgic atmosphere. Record of Lodoss War is it's a recognizable IP for people like me who grew up with anime, in the 80s and the 90s and stuff like that. So to be able to see Deedlit in her own game is kind of trippy for me. And the fact that if I do believe this game is canon in that it is bridging a gap between the Lodoss War that I grew up with and the new Lodoss War with new characters, stuff like that. Because Deedlit, she's a high elf. She's either immortal or just lives forever. I can't recall. It's been a while since I've watched the anime or read the manga or anything. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, it's kind of cool to see Record of Lodoss War come back. You're seeing Deedlit. You're seeing all these other characters and enemies that I used to watch as a kid. And I don't know, it's just nostalgia. I love that kind of crap. Next, we have the cons. First one is that it's the game's kind of short. It's about 6 hours. I would say 6 to 8 hours, but probably closer to 6. I personally don't think that's terrible, but I know a lot of people will look at that and be disappointed with such a short runtime. But the thing is about Deedlit or Wonder Labyrinth is that it is very fast-paced. I would say there's not very little downtime. It's when it comes to being a Metroidvania, it's not like a very traditional Metroidvania. In fact, I feel like its Metroidvania-ness was kind of tacked on at the end of development. I could be wrong at that, but it feels like this was supposed to be a level-based game. In fact, when you go in between biomes, it even has kind of like this is the next stage bumper, and that just seems weird for Metroidvania. But yeah, there's not a whole lot of backtracking in the game or anything like that. You're constantly moving forward, and so the 6-hour playtime feels even shorter because you're constantly, in a state of action. You're constantly fighting stuff, moving forward, progressing, things like that. But definitely I can see somebody taking a look at that 6-hour playtime and getting a little disappointed. The next con I have here is the lack of story depth. Wonder Labyrinth tries to do that trope where it's what do you want to call it? It's like the amnesiac protagonist, right? And whenever anyone uses that trope, you gotta you're learning along with the character, right? Which probably works well because I would imagine a lot of people who play this game didn't grow up with Record of Lodoss War, or maybe they did. I don't know. And so you're basically following along with Deedlit and learning alongside her, and that's I don't know. For me, it didn't really work because the game is so short and. These characters aren't super recognizable. Don't get me wrong; they're fine if you're into the series, but not a lot of people know these characters. And so the story is just mainly Deedlit coming up against characters. Some sort of vagueness is said, and then the story just kind of continues. And really, by the end of the story, I would imagine most people would be like, "Oh yeah, I see this twist coming." Right? Maybe not. Maybe you don't have all the details down, but you figure out. You're like, "Oh, okay, I saw this coming." All right, and my last con here is limited replayability. Once you beat this game, there's very little incentive to replay it aside from some minor exploration. Like I said, this game, it feels like its Metroidvania-ness was tacked on at the very end of development, and so backtracking is not a huge thing. Every once in a while, you'll get a new move, and you can go back to a previous biome and collect something not entirely useful, at least for the critical path, but some sort of new magic spell or some sort of upgrade or something like that, like a health upgrade or something. But yeah, once you beat the game, there's not a whole... You can come back, and I can't even remember if there's even different difficulties in the game, but I know there are some secrets, like beating a boss without taking any damage can get you a better sword. There are some things like that, but I don't know. If that's your bag, get into it. For me, I was just once I beat Wonder Labyrinth, I forgot about it. I don't know. The game is very forgettable, and I went into this in my review of the game. So if you're interested in my take on that, go check out that video. But the game feels largely forgettable, just because you're constantly moving forward. There's hardly any downtime to really soak in anything in the game. I don't know. It's hard to explain so concisely. You can check out my video on that, but. Yeah, limited replayability. It's ultimately a forgettable game. It's not bad. It's so pretty. It looks good, but just not the best Metroidvania you're going to play out there. And I guess that brings us to my final thoughts. Wonder Labyrinth is a good game with a pretty coat of paint that gets it likened to Symphony of the Night a lot. But Wonder Labyrinth doesn't even come close to being as amazing as Soten. Matter of fact, Wonder Labyrinth is hardly on par with your average Metroidvania. If not for its amazing presentation and IP recognition, Wonder Labyrinth would be a pretty forgettable MV. That's not to say I don't like the game. I do. It just feels like its Metroidvania-ness was an afterthought. So I don't think it's going to surprise anyone when I put Wonder Labyrinth in C tier. Next up, we have Outbuddies DX. So first off, I don't know what the DX is all about. Maybe the DX means it's the deluxe edition of the game. I don't know. I can't tell you the difference between Outbuddies and Outbuddies DX. If anyone wants to help me out with that, feel free to drop something in the comments. But I played Outbuddies DX on the Switch, and so that's what I'm talking about. And so, what is Outbuddies? Outbuddies takes players deep under the sea to explore Balam, a forgotten city buried in the ocean's depths. You play as Nikolai Bernstein, an adventurer who forms a partnership with a friendly AI drone upon falling into the Balam, or the city or whatever, and this drone is called Buddy. Together, they solve environmental puzzles, uncover ancient mysteries, and face off against Lovecraftian horrors. Alright, first pro we have here is the retro aesthetic. I mean, take a look at the game. It's kind of interesting. It looks like it could be like a 8-bit, 16-bit game, but it kind of also has this kind of neon look to it. It's very interesting. Neon Dark. It was something that I ultimately liked. I mean, obviously, it's in my pros. I can see some people not enjoying this kind of aesthetic, but I thought it was pretty solid. Next pro I have here is the 2-character gameplay. You mostly play as Nikolai, Mr. Bernstein, if you will, or Dr. Bernstein. Anyway, Bernstein is your main character you're going to control, but then you can also control Buddy, who is the AI drone that like basically brought you, that saved you at the beginning of the game. And it's just like a flick of like a joystick or something like that. You get to control Buddy, and it's kind of cool because it adds a unique layer to puzzle solving and exploration, right? So you can control Buddy, and he can scan stuff. He can manipulate these monsters and stuff, very much like Axiom Verge. You remember the gun in that game, the Disruptor gun, or gosh, my brain is fried, but I think it's called the Disruptor gun or something like that from Axiom Verge, where you glitch out enemies and stuff like that, and they do different patterns and things. You can do that in Outbuddies as well with Buddy later on. So yeah, it's a cool concept being able to control both of those characters, not exactly at the same time, but you're just like switching, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's really awesome. My next pro here is the deep exploration in the game. Balamb is a very vast, interconnected world full of secrets and stuff like that, right? And so if you like exploring things, then this game is probably going to be for you. It is a Metroid-like, so there's not a whole lot. There's no leveling up and there's no gear or anything like that. This game really feels like like a Metroid game. Like, not in every respect. When it comes to the controls and stuff, it doesn't feel like a Metroid game. We'll get to that, but overall, it's going for that Metroid feel. And largely, I think it does a pretty good job. And then my last pro here, I just put Wozon helping you. The Wozon are the people that live down in Balamb or in this underground city, and they are imprisoned in a lot of places. And so you can rescue them. And as you rescue them, they will help you during boss fights. And so what I mean by help you is that they will run into the room and drop a healing item for you, which is really, really helpful. This game is hard, which we're going to get to the cons here in a second. This game is pretty hard. And so the Wozon coming in and helping you is a really cool mechanic. It makes you want to explore this game and find them so that they can help you with these hard boss fights. And I can't remember, I think there's like a formula to it. Like for every 6 Wozons you save, 1 will come in to give you a healing item during boss fights. Something like that. Maybe I'll look it up later or something like that. But yeah, I thought that was a really cool incentive to find these little guys. All right, on to the cons. First thing I have here is that this game's controls are a bit clunky. Movement and combat mechanics feel a little unintuitive. Bernstein does this thing where he gets hit and he rolls and it's kind of obnoxious. And just platforming overall could just be a little tighter. I wouldn't say the controls are bad or awful or anything like that, but just some tightness and some more responsiveness would have been great. The next con I have here is a pretty big one for a lot of people, and that's sparse guidance. The lack of clear objectives can make the game pretty frustrating at times. For me, it's not a big deal because I like getting lost in my Metroidvanias and I don't like my hand being held. But at the same time, a little guidance goes a long way. You don't have to put objective markers on a map for me, but somehow use some logical way within the game's mechanics or with the game's NPCs that help me understand where I need to go next or what I need to do or something like that. You gotta remember, when it comes to Metroidvanias, you gotta remember that the definition is that there is guided non-linearity. So there's nothing wrong with a little bit of guidance. I don't want you holding my hand, but, you know, having some sort of logical and creative way to guide players to where they need to go is a good thing to consider when making a Metroidvania. And my last con here is that this game has a very steep difficulty curve. Some of these bosses just feel so hard. And it has to do with, like, I don't feel 100% comfortable with the game's controls. I said unintuitive earlier, and I meant that because, like, I just feel like the controls are fine, but it kind of feels like like if I were to like have my hands numbed. I don't know. It doesn't feel the greatest. Like I know I'm hitting the button, but it I don't know, maybe it's just not as tight, it's not as responsive as I need it to be, and so that just makes these like bosses just that much more difficult. And then these bosses, they hit way too freaking hard, and so you want to make sure you get those wozen so they can come in and give you healing items and stuff. And that's just the bosses. Like there are environmental hazards in the game and some level designs where it's just like, wow, they're really testing you, man. So yeah, this game is not for the weak. I'll just leave it at that. All right, my final thoughts for Outbuddies. Outbuddies is pretty good. I enjoyed it and saw it to the end for what that's worth. It's very much a Metroid clone, and there's nothing wrong with that. The controls are a little clunky, and the game can be pretty difficult, but if you want to play a Metroid game, you could do much worse than Outbuddies. And so I think it's fair to put it in the C tier. It's an average Metroidvania. It's not terrible. It's not great. It's definitely not something you want to put as high priority. Unless you're looking for more Metroid likes to play, then maybe consider this. But just know it's kind of tough. It's kind of tough. And it's kind of long too. I can't remember exactly how long it is, but it had to have been like 10 to 12 hours, something like that. And that time might even increase because the game is, like I said, there's not a whole lot of guidance to it. But anyway, C tier for Outbuddies. I think that's fair. Next up is Moonlight Pulse. I like this game a lot. I just think it's just a whole lot of fun. It looks good. It's a shorter Metroidvania, so it's a quick hit. I don't know. I just think it's a really good game, and I think a hidden gem of 2024, no doubt. And so, what is Moonlight Pulse? Moonlight Pulse takes place inside a celestial beast, and the characters you control are agents tasked with ensuring the health of the celestial beast. Meaning, you'll be fighting all manners of bacteria-looking monsters who want to take your home down. All right. First pro, I love this game's presentation. This game feels like a long-lost 16-bit classic. I think its character portraits may be deceiving. They look a little generic to me. I don't know if it's because of the lack of shading or whatever, and maybe that's just the art style that they're going for. But to me personally, I thought the portrait art for all the characters looked a little generic, but the sprite work in this game is not. It is really, really fantastic. And the game uses a lot of bright colors, and everything just kind of like pops. It's a really nice looking game. All right, my next pro, the character swapping mechanic. You will get control of 4 characters total, and you can swap them on the fly using the bumpers or something, I can't remember. And each character has their own abilities, their own health pool, everything like that. And so it's not just a good idea to swap them, to preserve your HP and whatnot, but you also will need to swap so you can utilize their different abilities to progress in the game. And because of that, that means there's a lot to find in the game. For instance, the characters, they have their own items to find to increase their attack and whatnot. And I love stuff like that. And then there's this character saving mechanic that you get. As you progress in the game, you will increase your hearts, and you usually do that by staying at a campfire and talking or something like that. And hearts, they're different than your HP. Hearts, they represent the saves that you get. And so if you have 5 hearts, I don't know how high the hearts can get in this game. I think you get like 5 or 6 or something. But anyway, let's say you have 3 hearts. You have 3 hearts, that means a character can come in and save another character so that character doesn't die. So I could be playing as the big mole guy, right? And then I take a fatal hit. Then the blue fox character come in, push the mole out of the way, and then take the damage and then continue the fight so that the mole guy lives. I thought that was a cool mechanic. I love stuff like that. But yeah, the whole character swapping thing, the 4 different characters you can use, a lot of fun. The next pro I have here is it's got a unique setting. You're inside of a celestial beast, just like floating in space, and you're an agency that's supposed to keep this thing healthy. That is a goofy premise, right? I mean, that's silly, and you don't really see that very often. But what's really interesting about it is there's a bunch of different side stories with every character, and they all get I don't know if fleshed out's the word, but they all have their own arc. And it's a complete arc. You get to see characters. Say like there's the sheep character, the lamb character, or whatever. She has a storyline, and she acts a certain way, and she's motivated by certain things. And then you get to like experience why she acts that way, and you get to go through a journey with her to the end. And it's, again, I'm being vague because I don't want to spoil anything, but that's really, really cool. And all these characters have something going on. And for a game that's so short, I think I already talked about its shortness, and we'll talk about that in the cons. But for a game so short, like 4 to 5 hours, right? It's interesting to see these little arcs, coming to fruition. It's nuts. And the story itself, the overarching plot, is kind of cool. Like, you got this, it's basically, you got the celestial beast, these people live within the beast, and so it's in their best interest to keep this thing healthy, right? And to keep it healthy, that means they're fighting off the bacteria, they're killing off, like they're killing off, and then this will go into the next pro. But the fast travel in the game is just like a big artery that like spans the entire game, and so to use the fast travel, you have to find where there's clogs, and which is like this parasite-looking thing or bacteria-looking thing or something like that. Kill it, and then it opens up that artery, so then you can jump inside and fast travel through the artery. It's really cool, really interesting. They did such a really good job. And so yeah, going back to the story. So yeah, you're these people inside this celestial beast that is floating in space. You're keeping it healthy by fighting bacteria and unclogging its arteries. And essentially, there is a threat that comes to this beast, and this threat is, threatening enough to where it could actually kill the beast because it wants to eat, right? And so you have to stop this thing from killing and eating your celestial beast. And the game does some really cool stuff to really show this character as a threat. This character meaning the bad guy, the final boss, if you will. They show this character as a threat, and they even show like the consequences of what happens if this character gets its way. Like really, like again, for a game that's 4 to 5 hours, they nailed the story in this. Like I was invested the whole time. I was motivated. The game is silly. It's funny. It's serious. Like it's I don't know, man. I don't know what I'm trying to say. It's just they did such a good job with the short amount of time that I invested in the game. I thought it was great. And I guess that brings me to the last pro, is this game has wonderful pacing. At no point did I feel lost in this game. I was always progressing, not just the story, but also all of my different characters. You're discovering stuff. It's just, as you play this game, there's like hardly any downtime, and it just feels great. All right, let's talk about the cons. First off is the shortness. I've already mentioned it. It's like 4 to 5 hours. I would imagine someone who's really familiar with the game can probably beat this game in under 3. It is a very short experience. I personally, I don't look at like that shortness as a bad thing. I like my Metroidvanias to be at least 5 hours, and I think I almost hit 5 hours with this, but I still had a really good time with the game. But yeah, it is a pretty short experience. My next con is I wish that the percentage in the game was more rewarding. So let me explain that, because the game, I don't think the game explained it at all. This percentage that you're building up in like the bottom right corner, I think is where it is in the game. But yeah, there's a percentage that you're building up, and I don't know if I'm stupid or if I missed something, and maybe you guys have already gathered it. But that percentage is the health of your celestial beast you're riding in, and so the higher that percentage, the healthier the beast is. This is a cool concept that actually makes sense and gets used at the end of the game. But other than the end of the game, this percentage, this health meter, if you will, of your celestial beast doesn't do much for you. And I think in my review for the game, I talk about, what I would have liked to have seen with this percentage. I think I said something like I wanted rewards as I hit different thresholds or milestones with a percentage. Like there was some place with like valves or fleshy walls or something like that, you know what I'm saying? And each time you hit like 20%, 40%, 60%, something like that, one of these doors would open and you would get a reward. And maybe, because I'm always looking for excuses to have multiple endings, maybe once you get like 80 to 100% or something like that, this one valve opens and it's a whole other biome, and you can find some secret to help you with the final boss. I don't know, but something like that would have been it would have made that percentage much more impactful throughout the game. And like I said, it does get used in the end of the game. I don't want to spoil it, but it does get used. I just want it to be used more, I suppose. I don't know. And I guess that's it for the pros and cons to the game. I do want to talk about spoilers just really quick, just because I think it's funny. I made a music video for this game's final boss because I thought it was so metal. And so I just made some goofy little thing. I'll throw up with spoilers now. So, you know, if you don't want to see some spoilers for the boss of the game for this game, go to this timestamp to fast travel to my final thoughts and tier placement on it. For everyone else, just enjoy this stupid little thing that I made.
Spoilers.
Yeah, man, this final fight is crazy. Like, up to this point, this game has not been violent at all. And then suddenly, you're, like, trapped in this fight with the final boss, and you're fighting on top of the Celestial Beast's heart with, like, walls of blood spurting on both sides, keeping you in this arena. And he's just, like, eating your characters, just bites their heads off. It's nuts. It's such an insane tonal shift for the game. And I loved it so much, man. And depending on who lives and dies, because if this thing eats your head, you're dead, right? You're not coming back. And so depending on how many characters stay alive during this fight, you will get different endings. When I first played the game, I only had my mole guy alive at the very end. And then of course I replayed it and made sure everyone stayed alive. So there are different endings in the game based on who dies during this, but man, that blew me away. Just how different it is from the rest of the game. Like, amazing. All right, final thoughts for Moonlight Pulse. Moonlight Pulse is good. I'm not going to pretend it'll blow your socks off, but I can't think of any reason why anyone wouldn't enjoy this game. It plays well, it looks great, and it's short. Even if by some freak chance you don't like the game, then at most you wasted an afternoon playing through it. I don't know. I think it's a B tier game. Not like I'm not gonna say it's close to A tier, but yeah, this is a B tier game, and I think everyone should give it a shot. Next up is Rebel Transmute. Rebel Transmute follows the journey of Moon Makono as she searches for answers about her mother's disappearance. During her search, Moon crash lands onto a planet run by an evil corporation where her mother was a prominent scientist. After recovering from the crash, Moon resolves to discover what happened to her mother and to take this evil corporation down. I guess first and foremost, I just want to say that I actually liked Rebel Transmute a lot. And I'll probably get into all that as we go through the pros, but yeah, I thought this was a really, really good Metroidvania. And that takes me to my first pro here, and that is this game feels very passionate. Rebel was developed by one person, and based on the game's level design, the interconnected world and how it loops back, and a bunch of other factors, I feel the passion behind this game. Especially when it comes to all the hidden stuff within the game. Like, it feels like a Metroidvania fan, like a real hardcore Metroidvania fan, made this game. And I'm not saying that other Metroidvania developers aren't huge Metroidvania fans. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is I just feel it with this one. And so that just takes me to my next pro, and that is I love the upgrades in this game. This game is very much a Metroid-like, but it also does that thing that Hollow Knight and other games do where you can collect, I guess in this game they're called like cybernetic enhancements. I can't remember, like modules or something like that. But yeah, it's very much like the charms from Hollow Knight. You equip them and it does various things. This game also does that Nier Automata thing where it like you can get rid of modules that affect the game, like you can get rid of your HUD and stuff like that. I think in this game you can actually get rid of your OS, just like in Nier Automata. I could be wrong, but it's just goofy stuff like that. You can do that in Rebel Transmute as well. And I always like these kind of modifiers that help you out in the game, making the game feel and play differently based on the modifier that you attach. It's nothing groundbreaking, but I like it. I just, whenever any game does it, I appreciate it. And I guess this brings us to the next pro, and that is that this game has so many hidden techniques. Like, I don't want to get into any of them, but you get, when it comes to Metroidvania, you're very accustomed to or you're used to getting a new ability, and then that new ability helps you, progress further by getting you up to the higher ledge or through the gate or whatever. Rebel Transmute certainly does this, no doubt, but it also has I want to say 2, maybe 3 hidden techniques in the game that utilize a combination of abilities that you find in the game and those enhancement modifier things I was just talking about. And again, I don't want to spoil anything, but like I said, a combination of your abilities and the modifiers can actually create different abilities for you to use to get to other areas in the game. A lot of these areas are going to be optional because these hidden techniques are very hidden, but they're just a lot of fun to find. And when you find them, you're like, holy crap, that was awesome. The abilities you gain in this game are called transmutations, and there is one transmutation in the game that is 100% optional, and in order to get it, you have had to have found out how to use one of the secret techniques in the game. It is one of the easier hidden techniques to find in the game, but it's still tough to master to get this one stupid transmutation. I will tell you one hidden technique. It's because it is 100% necessary to get through the game, and it's not hidden like the other ones I was talking about with the modifiers. This one is you get a move later in the game where it's kind of like the Crystal Heart from Hollow Knight. I hate that I always use Hollow Knight as my references, but so many people have played it, it's just easier. But yeah, it's kind of like the Crystal Heart from Hollow Knight. You just kind of like dash through the air. In Rebel Transmute, you get a move like that, but then you hit a wall, and if you press the button in a direction in just the right time and angle, you can then shoot off that wall, kind of like a Shine Spark from Super Metroid. And you need to know this in order to advance in this one biome. I'm not gonna lie to you, it took me forever to figure out that I had to do this. But yeah, I ain't mad at the game for it. I love crap like that. I love being oh, I could have done this the whole time if I only had known this. At that point, it feels less like a Metroidvania and more like a Metroidbrania. I know there are some people out there that hate that term. Again, if you want to find a better term for Metroidbrania, go for it. I don't know anything better right now. But yeah, it feels like some of the things in this game are knowledge-based instead of just utility-based, if you get what I'm saying. And so yeah, all the hidden techniques and stuff that you got to find on your own, I love that kind of crap. And Rebel Transmute does it a lot. The next pro I have here is the handcrafted world. I feel like this world has a very strong sense of design and intentionality behind it. And you see it especially with how it interconnects and how it loops and the shortcuts and things like that. I really like the level design in this game. And one of my favorite things in any Metroidvania is when biomes are hidden within biomes, and you can only find that hidden biome after going so far into the game and getting a different ability or something like that. I don't know. That's a very specific thing to like. I get it. But Rebel Transmute does this a few times, 2 or 3 times, something like that, where you go through a biome and there's an exit to that biome you just cannot reach. But then you gotta kind of log it in your brain, and so when you get an ability later on, you can return to that biome. Now you're diving deeper into the biome, and then finally finding a whole other biome. I love crap like that, and Rebel Transmute does it. And just to be a turd, I'll bring up Hollow Knight again, because Hollow Knight does this kind of as well. It's been a minute since I played Hollow Knight, but it's that biome where all the ashes are falling. Maybe it's called Kingdom's End or something like that. Make fun of me in the comments. I can't remember nothing. But there's you can go through that biome, and I want to say it's a 100% optional biome, to be quite honest with you. But you can go through that biome, and there's one spot that if you do not double jump, you will miss out on getting the King's Crest and all kinds of crap. And it's little things like that I love. And I love Hollow Knight when it did it, and I love Rebel Transmute when it does it. All right, going on to the cons for Rebel Transmute. It has occasional pacing issues. The narrative and exploration sections sometimes feel unevenly balanced. There's a part where you find this AI companion, and she puts objectives on the map, and until you get all those objectives done, the narrative just comes to a complete halt. It's not a big deal. It's really not. It's just it did kind of bug me because I was interested in this game's story. Next con is kind of a big one. This game has a severe lack of polish to it. Again, it was made by one guy. I played the game at launch. I haven't played it since, so I want to just lead with that caveat. But when I played the game at launch, it had a lot of bugs and performance issues that really messed up my experience. The big one, it didn't soft lock me, but it had the potential to do it. I'm glad it didn't happen. But the big one was I was fighting optional bosses in the game, and this one optional boss glitched out. I defeated it, and then the game just kind of stopped, and it wouldn't let me out of the boss room. and I would reload the game, and I was still stuck in the boss room. So I was able to have another save to get out, but man, that was rough, and that was really late in the game. For anyone who's played Rebel Transmute, it's the parts where you're like have to find those computers, and you go inside the computers. Yeah, one of those optional bosses just completely glitched out, and I was stuck in there. It could have been worse, but it was still pretty bad. And there are other instances of the game lacking polish. Like, this was like the worst instance. But, some of the controls weren't as tight as they needed to be, and there was just lots of like little things going on that just made the game not feel as tight as it should. But yeah, like I said, I played it at launch. It was kind of buggy and had some issues. Maybe it's been patched and it's better now. I'd like to go back and play the game, but I haven't had a chance yet. Just know that it was like that in the beginning, but maybe it's not now, and you can let me know in the comments that hey, it's been fixed. So there you go. My next con is that there's hardly any guidance in this game other than the time I told you about finding that AI and it puts objective markers on your map. Other than that, the game just lets you go wherever you want to go. As a hardcore Metroidvania fan, I like that, but I can see how people wouldn't like that. And I can also say that, again, we got to find a balance between guiding players and not guiding them, I suppose. Like how much guidance is necessary to make a Metroidvania feel playable? It's a delicate balance, because too much guidance makes it feel like it's not a Metroidvania, but not enough guidance can leave you lost and frustrated. In Rebel Transmute, I don't think it balanced this guidance very well, especially when it came to like special items in the game that were necessary for stuff. Like again, it's been a minute since I played the game, but there's like this round item that you can get. I can't remember what it is. Maybe it's like a CD that had some memory on it or something like that. And there are apparently multiple NPCs who accept this item in exchange for something cool, like some sort of modifier that you can put onto Moon, or even giving her a brand new ability. But if you sell those items, because there are NPCs who will buy that item from you, you can screw yourself out of stuff from this game. Like, I know I missed a couple of abilities because I was stupid and sold the item, because I was like, well, there's only been one NPC in this huge game who accepts this item. I've already gotten the reward from them, so why am I even holding on to this? That's a very stupid noob move. I get it, but I needed the money for something, so I was like, whatever, I'll just get rid of this so I can buy all this other stuff. Then, later on, I found the other NPCs who accept the round item, and then I couldn't give it to them because there's a finite amount in the game, and I was just like, this sucks. So I do want to replay Rebel Transmute, now having the knowledge that I can screw myself over on something. And there's a few items like this oil that you can get. Like, this game has ample opportunities for you to screw yourself out of stuff. And I know that can frustrate players, because I know it frustrated me. And then my last con here, going back to kind of the bugginess, but beyond the bugginess, this game feels unfinished. Not just like gameplay-wise, but narrative-wise. I mean, I played through the game and I beat it, and it was the narrative was fine, and it closed the loop on stuff. But I feel like this game wanted to do so much more. It was so much more ambitious than what it ended up being. And I remember taking a look at the Kickstarter to this game and seeing that there were stretch goals, and one of the stretch goals was like, you could go to the center of the planet and find the real secret to what's going on. And the game. The Kickstarter did not reach that goal, so we do not get to go to the middle of the planet to see the secret or whatever, right? That sucks. I hate that. But it is what it is. Stuff like that happens in Kickstarter. And so because of that, there are things in the game that happen that just make it feel like it's unfinished. Like it needs more to make it make sense, right? And I'm being vague on purpose because I don't want to spoil anything, but basically, I'll give you one example. There are optional bosses in the game. You can find those optional bosses, beat them, and then they'll give you some fascinating lore behind the game, but there's nothing you can do with that lore, right? And there's nothing that happens after defeating those bosses. Defeating those bosses only gives you lore that you could have went without. And maybe that's a reward for some people. It wasn't for me. I was really looking forward to actually beating these optional bosses, being given something like an item, ability, access to another biome, I don't know, something. It seems like that might have been what maybe brought us to the center of the planet had the Kickstarter been more successful with its stretch goals. But because it didn't reach that goal, this whole like arc of finding these secret bosses just kind of like falls flat. And there are other things in the game that really kind of disappointed me. Like, there's a game-spanning quest where you got to find these echoes, and these echoes are just kind of like remnants of someone's spirit in their last thoughts or something like that. So you collect those, and then you take them to this spot that's actually like really tough to get to. Like, it's a really challenging platforming section, and you have to do this platforming section every time you want to get up to this area. And so you bring the echoes here, and again, I played the game at launch, so if they fix this, great. If not, this I'll just tell you what my experience was. I got up there, and I would give the echoes to this machine, right? And at no point did I get a reward for any of the echoes I brought. Like, sometimes, like even in this game, they actually have kind of like a Grubfather type thing. Again, I'm using Hollow Knight references. But there's this character that you bring these little, I don't even know, they're like brains or something that hold consciousness of like the ship mates or something. You take these consciousness chips to this character because it's an AI that wants to save everybody. And so you bring those there, and that AI will give you rewards incrementally as you're bringing in stuff, just like the Grubfather, right? I kind of expected that also with these echoes, or at least something epic when I bring all the echoes to them. And I cannot 100% remember exactly what the reward was for bringing all the echoes, but it was disappointing. I think it was like a health fragment upgrade or something stupid like that. I was very disappointed, and I feel like that there should have been part of something bigger, but because of like resources and not meeting that stretch goal, that was then be like, instead of this being this epic thing that opens up this awesome part, we're just going to give you a little reward and be done with it. There's many instances in the game where it feels like that. It just feels unfinished, and it's just disappointing. But again, I get it. You try to do a Kickstarter, you hit your goal, awesome, good job. But some of those stretch goals weren't hit, and so it just made the game feel less because you didn't add that stuff in. Maybe I'm the only one who feels that way. You can let me know in the comments. But yeah, this game just feels like it was way more ambitious than it actually was, and just wasn't able to get there because it hit all those stretch goals. All right, my final thoughts on Rebel Transmute. Rebel Transmute's a tough one to place for me because I like it a lot, but I know it's pretty flawed and frankly unfinished, or at least it feels unfinished. I just feel like there was so much more the game had to offer and that it wanted to do with its narrative, but just didn't get to it due to lack of funding or time or both. But what is here is pretty good. I liked its exploration and appreciated how the game hid maneuvers from you. The game really respects your intelligence and offers ample opportunities for you to flex your brain, which is a rewarding feeling in and of itself. I don't know. I look back at the time I spent with the game fondly because it has a true sense of exploration. But it has so many flaws with its glitches and its platforming not feeling very tight. It's tough for me to recommend it to anyone who's not a hardcore Metroidvania fan. But if you are a hardcore Metroidvania fan, which is what I'm making my list for, then I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say that this game is in the B tier. It's not exceptional, but it's a little better than average. All right, y'all, we got ourselves a big one here. GRIME. So, what is GRIME? GRIME is a dark and atmospheric Metroidvania. You play as a sentient being made of living stone who uses an unusual black hole-like weapon to absorb enemies and grow stronger. Other than that, that's pretty much the entire setup to the game up until you find, what's his name, Shidra, the world pillar or whatever. But yeah, you don't get a whole lot starting out in this game, and I know that's the appeal to a lot of people, and I certainly like it as well. All right, talk about some pros for GRIME. First up, that unique absorption mechanic I alluded to in the introduction. Akhlon, which is the name of the character. I don't know if that's a spoiler, but I'm just going to say Akhlon because I don't know what to call him if I don't. But Akhlon, he has a black hole for a head, and he uses that to parry. And when you parry someone with that black hole, it will kill them. Like, it won't always kill them, but if they're under a certain threshold, because they'll have like an HP bar, and there's like you'll see a section that once they hit this threshold, if you do a parry to them, it kills them, and you absorb them. And absorbing enemies, if you absorb a certain amount of them, it gives you different abilities you can unlock. It's probably the coolest feature in the game, in my opinion. And this really kind of leads us to our next pro, in that this game has all the addictive Souls-like stuff. Just all of it. You got your different weapon types, you got your different builds, you got your gear. You get gear bonuses if you find all of the gear in a set bonus, if you will. You level up, you allocate stats, you get things called hunt points that you use. It's like when it comes to like just progression for your character, it's all here, and I love it. It's just absolutely fantastic stuff. GRIME just has one of the best progression systems that you can have in a Metroidvania or Souls-like. Okay, next pro here is the atmospheric world building. I have my critiques on the world building and the narrative for this game, but the environments are very surreal. The creatures are grotesque, and quite honestly, and this is actually like my number one con, we'll get to it, but I think this game is so ugly. Like, just super ugly. It's tough to look at sometimes, but not in like a graphical sense, unless you're playing on the Switch. Then, ugh. But anyway, like, it's just an ugly game, and that's its design. It wants to be ugly, and there's a narrative reason for that, and I applaud the game for it, but it still is ugly. Anyway, I'm just messing around, but like, yeah, the world building here is really, really nice, because like I said, you don't really get you get like nothing, quite honestly, when you start the game. You see like these two like space ladies like breathing into each other, then suddenly Aklan exists, and then you're going through this world, and it's just like any other Souls-like. So much time has passed. You're trying to figure out what happened here and why people are the way they are and stuff like that. Like, to me, like, these Souls-like games feel like games for archaeologists. You know what I mean? It's like you're always coming to like a long dead kingdom, and you get to talk to all these people, and you got to piece things together. It all feels very archaeological to me, and GRIME is no different. So it uses a lot of Souls-like tropes to great effect. Speaking of Souls-like tropes, next pro here I have is the combat is challenging. I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I sucked at GRIME. I'm just not very good at parrying. It's just something I've never been very good at. And to be good at GRIME, you have to be good at parrying, because parrying is linked to a lot of stuff. There are some bosses you can't even hurt unless you can parry. There are some aspects of progression you can't access unless you parry. But I need you to know that I have this in the pros. I didn't put like the combat being challenging in the cons. I appreciate being challenged. I like difficulty in my combat. And I imagine a lot of people that like GRIME also like the combat's challenge. But yes, GRIME's combat is challenging, and thus very rewarding if you want to engage in all the game's mechanics. And then my last pro here is that this game has very decent platforming. I'm not going to say the platforming's like great, but for a combat-focused game, typically you don't see like platforming really flourishing. But GRIME, it does have some decent platforming sections. I'll dive a little bit deeper into that in the cons, unfortunately, but it's not bad. Pretty good platforming. You utilize abilities in interesting ways, like the pull ability, and he eventually gets a double jump, like at the very freaking end of the game. Anyway, let's move on to the cons. First con I have here, we can skip. I already talked about that. I think the game is ugly. Maybe you don't think the game is ugly, but I'm fairly certain the intention of the design was to make the game ugly. In fact, like that's what the characters, aren't they called the uglies or something? I can't remember, but the beginning characters are ugly, and the game is all about trying to be beautiful, right? And as you progress in the game, you see different tribes or whatever of people, and they get prettier and prettier, you know. But anyway, yeah, this game is intentionally ugly. I don't know if that's a con or not, but I mean, I don't know. I'll let you. I'll just throw it out there. Next is the game's steep learning curve. I talked about the game's challenging difficulty. Again, that can be a con for some people, so I want to make sure that I put that on here. Just that, like, you got to like really be on your game when it comes to the parrying, especially against like, who was the guy who absolutely trashed me over and over again? I think his name was like the Shapely Fetus or the Shapely Fitus or something like that. That took me like over a dozen tries to beat this dude. And it's because you have to get good with the game's parrying and the pulling and stuff like that. Like it's a great fight, absolutely fantastic. But yeah, if difficult battles, boss battles even, do not appeal to you, then this is definitely a con. The next con is again, it's interesting because this could be a con for some people, and other people, they love this stuff. It goes back to the archaeological nature of what Souls-likes are going for. But it's just, the game has very sparse storytelling. The narrative is cryptic and requires players to piece lore together, which can frustrate people that are seeking a clear story. Now, I will say this, and I know I said this in my GRIME review, but there is a specific character in the game, and I can't remember his name now off the top of my head. But he begins the game worshiping you, and then as the game story progresses, this character starts to resent you and becomes jealous, and there's just a really cool arc there. Like, the storytelling in the game, if you want to look for the lore and all that stuff, it isn't, man, I don't know, gosh, I don't even know what to say. Like, you do have to piece it together, but then there are character-driven stuff that kept me grounded. I liked seeing all, like, to me, this game kind of felt like a fairy tale. I remember talking about that in my review. Almost like a cautionary tale, right? I felt like it really linked closely to Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Not so much where it's like, this one's too hard, this one's too soft, this one's just right, stuff like that, but it's sort of kind of like that. Like, you start out with like, these people are too ugly, and these people are ugly but they found a purpose, and these people are more beautiful but they are subjugating people, you know, stuff like that. I go into more detail in my GRIME review. But the narrative is just like, it's interesting, it's pieced all over the place. Then like there's like a lot of character-driven stuff that kind of keeps it more grounded. And then, and I think I talk about this, actually in my next con, is that there's like, I call it the storytime biome, where literally you go to this biome, and all the biome is platforming challenges and finding like memories of again, I don't want to spoil it, but you find memories of someone, and it just directly tells you the story. And so it's really weird how this game starts out very Souls-like with its archaeological, digging things up for lore and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden you hit the storytime biome where you're jumping around and doing some platforming, and then you're also grabbing these memories that just like explicitly tell you what's going on. It was a weird dynamic. I don't know. It was like, it didn't work for me because I like the Souls-like archaeological digging of my lore, if that's the way you want to go, but then they just kind of copped out with this storytime biome. Maybe you liked it, maybe you didn't. I just found it to be inconsistent with the game's tone, or at least with the direction the game was going with its storytelling up until this point. And I might as well go into the next con because it kind of follows this kind of like inconsistency, and it has to do with this strange imbalance between combat and platforming. There's no doubt in my mind that GRIME is beloved for its combat and its progression systems, and those certainly are the game's focus. But then the game tries to be a platformer as well, which is fine because that's what a Metroidvania is, right? It's a sub-genre of the platformer. But it's kind of uncommon to see a game that's very combat-focused, like GRIME, also throw in platforming challenges. What I meant by the imbalance between combat and platforming is like, this game has so many sections in it where it completely segregates the two. Like, don't get me wrong, as you're doing your regular exploration, there's going to be some platforming stuff you got to do. But when they really want to, push your platforming skills, they sequester that section entirely and let you just focus on it. Like, there's this lead up to the one town with all the people who want you to kill them. Then there's a storytime biome, and then the little section after the storytime biome that's just nothing but platforming. And then even when, like, probably the best marriage of combat and platforming that I can recall is in the garden. But I get it. The game's combat is so difficult, you don't want to put like challenging platforming on top of that, right? So I understand the segregation. I just didn't think it made a very perfect balance. All right, let's go into the final thoughts for GRIME. So, GRIME is a genre favorite for a lot of reasons. People love its challenging combat. They love the absorption mechanic and how it links with character progression. They get fascinated by its lore. And these are all great reasons to love the game. Me, I think it's a great Souls-like, but I find the game to be too imbalanced for a Metroidvania. Combat and platforming rarely jive, at times getting completely segregated with multiple biomes and tiny areas that lead up to biomes created exclusively for platforming. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I'm sure it contributes a lot to GRIME's identity. And maybe this clear delineation between combat and platforming is the right move, considering how challenging the game's combat is. Like, could you imagine how much more challenging the game would be if you had to focus on tough platforming while fighting? Regardless, separating the majority of the game's most engaging platforming from combat just feels odd. But it's not like we haven't seen MVs that segregate combat and platforming before. Worldless does exactly this, but to greater effect because it still intermingles platforming with combat sections. GRIME, Outside of the Garden, sequesters its toughest platforming from the rest of the game. I don't know, maybe it's not an issue for you, but I just found that it makes its pacing feel weird. Regardless, I think GRIME is an outstanding game and fits well in the B tier. And the final game for our final episode of the Tier List series is Valdis Story, Abyssal City. In Valdis Story, you play as one of 4 characters caught in the middle of a war between angels and demons in a sunken city with the goal of escaping while taking down as many demons and angels as you can along the way. The first pro I have here is combat. Valdis Story's combat system is robust with skill trees and abilities allowing for deep customization. And customization is our second pro, but we'll get that here in a second. Now, there are 4 different characters you can play as in Valdis Story, and each one's combat is different than the others. Like I would say Reyna and Wyatt's combat's pretty similar, but then I can't remember the other one's names, but the dude with the gun and then the dragon girl, they fight differently. But as I talk about combat, I'm just going to stick with Wyatt, but just know that there are 4 other characters and you can play drastically differently with each one, especially when it comes to the builds, which I will get to in the next pro. And so yeah, sticking with Wyatt plays very much like Dante from Devil May Cry in that the combat is very combo heavy. And so with Wyatt, you can go in, you can do your ground combo, hit an enemy up, start doing an air combo, stuff like that. You can throw in dodges, special moves, whatever. And it's all very fluid and fun. It's a lot. It is. That's the thing. It is a lot of fun to do the combat in this game. And there's not a lot of MVs out there that focus on combos. There's probably the most modern Metroidvania I can think of that really focuses on comboing and juggling is going to be Vernal Edge. And so I tell people, if you like Valdis Story, you'll probably like Vernal Edge. You should give it a shot. But other MVs that have combo systems that are used in some way, the most recent one is probably The Weird Dream. That one, you build up your chainsaw ultimate attack by hitting more hits in your combo. And then there's Dust. Dust does multipliers for your for your experience gained. So there's that one. And then there's another one, Iron Diamond, if you haven't played that yet. I've played it. I want to make a video for that game because it's really, really great. But even in Iron Diamond, your damage increases as you make more consecutive hits. And so there are MVs out there with a, combo focus, but I don't know if any existed prior to Valdis Story. I want to say Valdis Story came out before Dust. They came out very closely. No, I think Dust came out first. I don't know. I'll throw it up on the screen. But I think Dust came out first and then Valdis Story. If I had to make a guess, I think Dust was 2010, Valdis Story was 2013. I'll throw the answer up so I don't look completely like an idiot. Like I tell everybody, I don't do research for these episodes, man. I just kind of go off the cuff. Anyway, so combo heavy combat is on the menu when it comes to Valdis Story, and I like it a whole bunch. All right, now on to the next point, which is the customization in the game. I said there's 4 characters, and basically with each character, I think there are 3 skill trees, maybe 4, I think it's 3. I'll throw up the correct answer here as well once I look that up. But depending on how you want to build each character, you could play this game drastically differently. So imagine that. You have 4 different characters to play as, and each character has 3 or 4 different builds you can create. And you can mix those builds too, so you don't have to go purely one way or the other. And so you could see that this game has a lot of replayability, and that's actually one of my later pros I was going to bring up, but I'll bring it up now. But this game has such high replayability with the different characters you can choose, the different builds that you can create, as well as the different branching paths that you could be a part of either willingly or not. And I say that because in this game there are invisible triggers, if you will, that will basically determine how events play out. And largely these events are basically towns. And so I can see how people get frustrated playing this game because there are 3 towns in the game that can get destroyed if you don't do things in a certain manner. It used to be a timely manner. You actually had X amount of real time, 2 hours to do something before something would happen that would get rid of this town, and when a town's gone, you lose a lot of stuff, a lot of it. You lose all of its shops, all of its NPCs, everything. So it's kind of a big deal. So yeah, these triggers began as actual time limits, real time, but then in later patches, the triggers were made into events in the game. So like if you proceed this far through the game, then the trigger will go off and do these things. So you no longer have to like speed run the game in order to save these towns. I don't know. It's up to you whether you like that or not. I personally, because it's a Metroidvania, I don't like time limits because I find that to be counterintuitive to what Metroidvanias are doing, and that is to let you into like a world and let you explore at your heart's content. But yeah, depending on how you approach the game and set up these triggers and save towns on top of the characters that you're using and the builds that you're making for these characters, the replayability for Valdis Story is very, very high. I don't remember how much Valdis Story costs. Maybe it's like $10, $15, whatever. It's well worth the price, especially if you dig the game, because the replayability is just so high. The next pro I have here is the game's rich art style. It's really interesting because it's like the art is hand drawn and the animations are really, really nice. It contributes a lot to the game's charm. They kind of look like they're claymation. They don't move stop motion-y, but at the same time they're not like 100% fluid. It has its own kind of feel to it, and I really dig it. I think it looks really good. But yeah, if I recall correctly, these are hand drawn sprites or characters, right? And then they render a layer over them to give them this kind of like claymation-y look. And maybe claymation-y look isn't the look I'm looking for, but it kind of feels claymation-y to me. But regardless, I dig it. And my very last pro on here, even though there's way more to like about this game, but the last pro I'm going to talk about here is I love the game's lore, especially in its post-game. The game's overarching plot and story is actually pretty cool. I do dig it a lot, but man, when you get the post game, it's amazing. But to get this post game, you have to go to these different biomes or secret biomes out of the way, and you got to fight these secret bosses. I remember one of them being really, really hard because he kept like regenerating as you're fighting them, and the other one wasn't so bad. But anyways, you collect the 2 eyes, which is like 1 eye for each of the goddesses. It makes sense when you play the game, but once you obtain those eyes and then you beat the game, you get these post-credit scenes. And basically, depending on which eye you have and which character you beat the game with, you're going to get a different post-credit scene. Like, for instance, with Wyatt, if I were to beat the game with Wyatt, I get his ending, which is pretty standard. But then it deviates depending on the eyes that you have. If you have 1 eye, you only get 1 of the post-credit scenes. If you have both of the eyes, you get both of the post-credit cutscenes. So you get the ending for Wyatt, then the post-credit scenes associated with Wyatt as long as you have 1 or both of the eyes. And every single one of these characters' post-credit scenes with the eyes are amazing. Like, the fact that this game doesn't have a sequel it hurts me. And I think, I don't know if I said this, I think I said it earlier, but I had not played Valdis Story until this year. I had never even heard of it. And I'll get into all that in a little bit. But having played it for the first time ever this year and attaining these endings, even I'm like, oh my God, let's go. Where's the sequel, right? Because everything that is shown in those post-credit scenes, that's the game I want to play. Like, don't get me wrong, Abyssal City set it up perfectly, but I want to play that game. Where's the sequel to that? And I know Endless Fluff is working on a beat-em-up right now, and I've heard that this beat-em-up is in the universe of Valdis Story, but I don't know if it's like a direct sequel or prequel or anything like that. If you're interested in looking at it, it's called Wendigo Blue. And it's being done by Endless Fluff. It's a beat-em-up. Check it out. But yeah, this post-game lore, when you grab the eyes, man, that's good stuff. And if Endless Fluff wants to make a sequel for Valdis Story, I would love to see it. All right, on to the cons. First con we have here is steep difficulty. Some battles and platforming segments can be overwhelming for less experienced players. And when I talk about platforming, there's like a lot of like racing against the time in this game. You go to these mana crystals, you activate them, and then you gotta like run to wherever you need to go because it opens up a gate or something like that. And if you don't get there in time, the gate closes. I actually hate this. I hate this a lot in any game. I hate it especially in Valdis Story because I do not feel the controls for Valdis Story are tight enough for this demanding of sequences. I was able to do them, don't get me wrong, but like just man, was this not my favorite part of the game. I will say, and this might be kind of spoilery, but you do get a double jump in the game. It is an optional thing to get. You can go the entire game and not get the double jump. But if you do get the double jump, and I got it early, if you do get the double jump, it breaks a lot of the platforming sections in this game because this game was not designed for the double jump, I do not believe. I don't know if there was a post-patch thing that added the double jump and the way to get the double jump, but yeah, if you get the double jump, it does break a lot of the game. There are some biomes that you could tell were created or plugged in after the game's launch that utilize the double jump and are designed around it, but a main majority of the game is not designed for the double jump. And I'm okay with that. I wasn't upset with it at all. I loved breaking sequences and just completely screwing over these racing sequences when it came to progressing in the game. I like that. But other than that, let's talk about the combat. Combat can be really, really difficult. At least I thought it was. I found a boss early in the game that I should not have fought. And they absolutely beat the crap out of me. But I did not stop because I was like, I can do this. It's not like overly difficult. I just got to figure it out. And I was able to. And what I really liked about that is it forced me to engage in all of the mechanics Valdis Story gives you to be successful. And so beforehand, I was really just kind of face tanking everything, just going in like Dante, smashing up, hitting them with combos. But with this boss, you couldn't do that. And so I had to figure out how to use the dodge move and how to use assists and all kinds of other stuff. And so I really appreciated it. So the game, though it can be difficult, it gives you all the tools to be successful as long as you're engaging with them. All right, next for the cons, unclear objectives. I will tell you this, I was playing the game and then I had to put it down for like a couple of weeks because I had other things to do. You know, I'm an adult, things like that happen. And then when I picked this game back up 2 weeks later, I was like, what the heck am I doing again? I couldn't remember what I was doing. There's no clear objectives in the game. Like, I guess the characters, they tell you where to go and stuff like that, but it's not always the clearest. Just something to help us out, you know, us old guys with the careers and stuff like that. Just if I had to put a game down and pick it up 2 weeks later, help me out, man. It's not that big of a deal, but just a small critique. Just give me some help. Next con is there were shops all over the place. I wish there was a way to kind of consolidate shops, but if I wanted to, you don't buy stuff in this game, you like craft stuff. So you find stuff out while you're exploring and then take your armor that you find or your weapons that you find and then refine them. And actually, I think the weapons you actually do buy. But anyway, when it comes to the armor, you find it out and about, you come back, and then you have to use materials that are dropped from enemies or materials that you find in order to, upgrade them. And I just wish there was a way to consolidate it because like there's one blacksmith that only does angelic armor, one blacksmith that only does the demonic armor, and then if you want specific items you got to go to this city and then you got to buy it from this person, and it's a whole lot of running around. And they fixed it a little bit with a fast travel system with the tram, but it's still kind of cumbersome. I mean, this is actually like a small gripe, but it was kind of an issue, especially when it was like, I get they do it for world building, but I was just confused for a little bit. I was like, where am I going to get this stuff? So it took me a while to get fully engaged into upgrading my armors and stuff. But once I did, I was just like, man, I just wish these were consolidated somehow. All these shops. And my last con in here is that there's just a lot of literal gatekeeping in this game. Like you have to find keys to open up different gates in order to progress, as opposed to actually getting abilities to do that progression. There's not a whole. There's I think you can grab on the ledges, you can wall jump, you can get the double jump. But like I said, this game isn't actually designed for double jumps. So yeah, a lot of the utility gating in this game is really done by by actual keys. Now, don't get me wrong, there is utility gating in this game, and a lot of that utility gating you find in the magic spells you get, which is really cool. There's like, and I didn't even bring this up for the deep customization. I should have, but man, like I said, this game does have deep customization, and you can get different affinities based on the different gear that you equip and the different spells that you equip, and just all kinds of weird stuff. But yeah, every spell kind of plays like Smash Brothers. You press a button to do a spell, or you press up in a button, or you jump in the air and press the spell button, and whatever. You can do all kinds of different spells, and pretty much every spell has some sort of utility to it. I know there's an early one you get is like an ice column you can create and then jump on it, and so you can then jump somewhere else, which kind of counts as the game's intended double jumping ability. But then when you actually get the game's double jump, now you got like a triple jump. It's really cool. But yeah, this game, it is a Metroidvania. It does have utility gating, but a lot of it really does come down to just literal keys you gotta find. All right, my final thoughts for Valdis Abyssal City. I said it earlier, but I had never played Valdis until earlier this year. I'd never even heard of it until my viewers asked me to check it out. And I'm glad I did, because it's really good. I could see myself falling in love with the game had I played it when I was a teenager or younger. But the game came out 3 years after I got my master's, and I was already entrenched in a career and raising a 3 and 5 year old. I was very busy during that period of my life when this game was released. But even playing it now as a nearly 40-year-old adult, I can see its appeal. Combo-heavy combat, tons of secrets, lots and lots of lore, and I genuinely love its visual style. It's a very good game, but I think it's just an okay Metroidvania, an above average okay Metroidvania. And so, I think the highest C is a good place to put Valdis. And there we have it, the final 6 games I've reviewed for the channel that still needed to be placed on the tier list. That's a lot of games. And now that I look at it, I can actually see there are a lot of games on the list that I haven't reviewed. Death's Gambit Afterlife, Unsighted, Astalon Tears of the Earth, Symphony of the Night, Super Metroid, the Guacamelee games, and so many more. Man, now I need to make a plan to catch up on all these games. Maybe I'll start reviewing one of these MVs a month until I get caught up. That sounds doable. And for the more eagle-eyed viewers, you may have noticed I skipped adding a game to the tier list entirely. A game I sorta reviewed, but gave up on because its performance on the Switch was so abysmal. That's right, I'm talking about Soldiers. For what little I played, I wasn't its biggest fan. Not only was the Switch performance trash, but the difficulty was off the charts. Now, I own it on Steam, and it's received a balancing patch. So, I think it's high time I give the game a legit playthrough and a proper review. That's only fair if I want to place it on the tier list. Look forward to that review in the near future. It's going to be a while though, because I haven't actually played through it yet. And that's it. The series is canceled. Everyone, pack your bags. We're going home. Bulldoze this bullshit and put in a parking lot. And I'm not going to say until next time, nerds, because there won't be a next time for this series. But you're still nerds.